when you ask someone like, "Hey, who's your favorite comedian?" and they say, "Oh, Eddie Murphy," you're like, "Okay, I don't know if you haven't paid attention to comedy in the last 30 years or you do pay attention and you realize how good he actually is." You
Mm-hmm.
know, like that's one of those things cuz like when you ask somebody like, "Oh, who's your favorite comedian?" and say they say like Jerry Seinfeld. You're like, okay, you probably stopped watching comedy in like the 90s. Like,
Right.
you haven't really kept up with it. Not that he's not great, but also, there's a ton of comedians. You ask somebody like, oh, who's your favorite comedian? They say Mark Norman. You're like, okay, you pay attention to like today's
Now,
comedy.
yeah.
You can kind of place like, oh, this is where you stopped listening or stopped paying attention to it. But Eddie Murphy's one of those guys that, like Steve Martin, kind of transcends decades.